for coming. And this is, I'm just going to say your names so I remember them because it's really important to me, and every one of you is important to me. This is Denise and Anya, and this is Kelly and Andre, and this is Derek, Eli, and Harry. Did I get it right? Okay, what's my name?
Shivani.
Okay, that's great. All right, so today we're going to explore the question, is it really necessary to have a group? So you're all here probably because you think it is. Am I correct?
Yes.
Well, I'm here to tell you that, okay, I'm with you. I'm with you. And Swami Grinand is with you too. Not everybody needs a guru. But there's an irony here. Everybody has a guru. But everybody doesn't need a guru in their current state of evolution. Because it's only when we really want to know God and find God and be in that state of bliss and be a channel for God, then we need a guru. But before then, which is a zillion incarnations, we don't. Because we need to develop other things. It's interesting that when the soul comes into manifestation and goes through its automatic evolution, you know, from being a mineral to a plant to an animal, it doesn't identify itself as an individual. I don't think a carrot is pining away to be a cabbage. You know, it's not identified with its body as a carrot, and I don't think a sapphire is longing to be a diamond. You know, they just are. And we see in the animal kingdom that there is more a sense of group than there is of individuality. So the bees, they belong to a community, which is really quite sweet, isn't it? And the ants and the birds all fly. So they have what's called a group identity, and also a group karma. But every one of us, even from when we were a mineral, and Yogananda, I don't know if you've heard this, one time said that he remembered all of his past lives back to when he was a diamond. Right? He wasn't a sapphire, he was a diamond. Through all of these incarnations, even from the beginning, when we were maybe a piece of coal or a parsnip, we have individuality. And in Sanskrit, it's called the Atman, the individual spark of the divine. And every one of us is complete in our soul, in our Atman. We already know God. We came from God, we're going to God. And we've come with a full package. And we have all of the flavors of God. Sometimes I think about it in this quite heretical way. If you want to make a minestrone, you know, that's a vegetable soup in Italy. And you get all your vegetables and you chop them up and you put in the onions and the celery and the parsley and the potatoes and the carrots and whatever you're going to put in the minestrone. And you cook it up for quite a while and then you go to serve it. And you put it into everybody's bowl. Do you have any doubt that all the flavors of the soup are in everybody's bowl? They're all there. And in the same way, we're like a bowl of soup of God's flavor. So we have all of that. And the challenge is to discover it. So what happens is we eventually come into a human body, and we no longer, have, so much the tribe of animals that we were with. And we have the opportunity through our evolution to discover our individuality and our independence, to become really independent. And when we have gone as far out, away from God, as we need to go. Because in order to go back to God, it has to be our choice. We have to have the ability to choose, and that's called free will. But in the other forms of life, I don't want to say lower, they are lower in a sense, but we don't want to be presumptuous. In the other forms of life, there is no free will. Animals, for example, even those that are highly evolved, they don't have choices. If they're hungry, they're going to go hunt, if that's what they are, if they're a carnivore, or find something to eat. And if it's time to reproduce, they're going to reproduce. They can't just say, well, I think I'll skip a meal, or well, I think I'll skip a season. It's the instinct. It is the drive that comes, a drive for survival. And there's no choice there. Now, some of the higher animals do begin to make choices. And we all know stories of, for example, a dog who has given its life in order to save its owner's life, or has saved the owner's life, or has protected. And so this indicates a level of choice. But when we come into the human body, we're really able to choose. But we don't know how to do that. And so there's the whole course of evolution, which you probably already heard about in your Raja Yoga course, about going from the Shudra, the soul that's very identified with its physical body, and just needs to eat, needs to clothe itself, needs to have some shelter, doesn't think about other people, very selfish. And on through all of the different stages of evolution, until we get to the final stage, which is the Brahman, which is the person who uses his free will to follow God without distraction. Now, all of us are making that journey. As I said, it's a journey. And we're all somewhere in that journey. For most of that journey, we don't need a guru, because we need rather to develop our free will, our independence. We need our ego. We use our ego until we are able to fend for ourselves and make decisions and be willing to take the consequences of those decisions, really to step up and be responsible individuals. We need to learn to use our energy in good ways, and when we don't, we suffer. Life is the guru for most of evolution. And when we are unhappy or when we suffer, we look for something else. If we don't like this, we look for something better. Life is the guru, and suffering is the means. At a certain point, and every soul comes to this point, sooner or later, he realizes that by himself, no matter how intelligent, no matter how creative, no matter how energetic he or she is, he or she cannot figure out how to get out of delusion. Because through all of the incarnations, we've become trapped. And we have identified ourselves so much with the physical form, with what we do, with what we think, with what we like and what we don't like, that's who we think we are. And when we want to get out of it, there's so much energy that we have invested in that identity that we find it very difficult. I mentioned the consequences of our actions. What's another word for that? The karma. Every action and thought has a consequence. And our karma teaches us. It comes back, it makes the circle, and gives us another opportunity to act in a more harmonious, more inclusive way. And a lot of the karma that we have created, we will have the strength and the courage to face and to deal with, but not all of it. In India, they talk about karma as being of 3 different kinds, and this is symbolic. The first kind of karma is like taking your finger and writing in water. So Anya, if you write in water, what's left?
A ripple?
A ripple. But is there anything that lasts?
No.
It's gone. So that's one kind of karma. So we do things, we speak, we talk on the telephone, we get in the car, we drive. They're all actions. Just like riding in water. There's a little ripple and it's gone. It doesn't really have much effect on us. Now there's a second kind of karma. And the Indian scriptures say it's like riding in the dust on a road or in sand on a beach. So what's left when you write in sand?
Whatever you wrote.
Whatever you wrote. But how permanent is that?
Till the wave comes.
Till the wave comes. Or the wind. And then whoosh, it's gone. So the wind, or the wave are our efforts, to do better and so forth. And then that karma can be overcome. But there's a third kind of karma. And that kind of karma, the scriptures say, is like writing in stone with a hammer and a, whatever it's called.
Chisel.
Thank you, chisel. And what's left? An indelible impression. That means it stays around, indelible, like ink. And those karmas are very difficult to overcome. And they're the ones that bring us back again and again. Probably each one of us knows what some of those karmas are. You probably said to yourself, it's come around again. Or I've done it again. And then you say, I don't want to do it again. I'm just not happy. And you try to not do it again. And what happens? Something pushes you. It's like you said, not going to smoke cigarettes. Did anybody here ever used to smoke? Okay, did you stop? Yeah. Did it take some time? You just did it. You were blessed. Yeah. Truly blessed. Yeah. But once you get to that point where you really say no, then it's no. But all the other times, something pushed you. And that's the force of habit. That's the force of our karmas. And they are mighty. They are mightier than the desire to smoke a cigarette or whatever it might be. And most of them we don't even know about. Because in any lifetime, not all of our karma is going to come out. We're not going to have to face it, thank heavens. I mean, we would be unable to get up in the morning if we had to face every bit of our karma. We only get a little sliver of the pie, a little tiny taste. And there's all the other karma that we're going to have to face in other incarnations. So one day, the soul wakes up and says, as Yogananda said one day, this is anguishing monotony. Did you hear that phrase? It just keeps coming around. How monotonous it is. Here I am, born again, little girl again, trying to learn this and grow up and, go through the heartbreaks and the challenges and the people liking me and not liking me and all of that. And there it is, again and again. Now, at this point, when we are really thoroughly disgusted, on the one hand, with this game, thoroughly aware of how difficult that the play is, then we need God. When we're strong, independent, frustrated, and confused. And that's when we need help. I think each one of us has called out for help. We've come to that point in our evolution where we say, I need somebody to guide me out of this labyrinth. And our karma really is like a labyrinth. We go strolling into the park one day and we stop here and smell these flowers and taste these fruits and whatever, and suddenly we're trapped. We're in a labyrinth. We don't know how we got there. We don't know how to get out of there. And we keep going and going and going, and there's no way out, no exit. Ever read that play? It's very descriptive. no exit. And then the soul wakes up and says, okay, I really need some help. A long time ago, I remember I was in that state. I was disappointed, I was confused, yeah, I didn't know, I thought I had known where I wanted my life to go, and I got discouraged about that. And then I just didn't know where to go. I didn't have anything else. And I remember writing in my diary the words, I think I need a guru. And I didn't even know what a guru was. No, I mean, I really didn't, but you know, you kind of hear, I mean, I'm not even going to tell you how long ago. So a long time ago, before there was so much awareness of yoga and meditation and gurus. But I wrote it down. You know, it's like I was thinking it and I made it concrete. And that was it. You know, that was the intention that was expressed. And somebody heard that, even though I didn't know why I wrote it. The universe heard that. And it wasn't many months later that I was sitting in a yoga class with Swami Ananda, and not many months after that when I arrived. And Ananda Village, I was 1969, in the very beginning. But I wasn't, I mean, on the one hand, I wrote, I think I need a guru. And on the other hand, it was like, I mean, come on, do I really need a guru? You know, I needed to be convinced. And it took me 3 years to be convinced. 3 years living in Ananda, to be convinced that I really did need a guru. I remember once I went to Swami Ananda and I said to him, Swami, I'm just, you know, everybody here, they're taking Kriya initiation, you know, most people are disciples. This was in early years, you know, like 1970. And I said, I don't get it. I don't understand. Do I need a guru? And he said to me, no, you don't. God is the guru. I said, oh, okay. I can accept that. And I just worked with that, you know, for a few years. And I had, by myself, you know, Swami Kriyananda, like any really good spiritual teacher, is not going to spoon feed you, you know, take you by the hand. You just need to figure it out. And at a certain point, I realized that God helps us, guides us through the guru. And tomorrow morning, the Sunday service, I'll talk a little bit about that. Not so much about the guru, but about being guided by God. So at that point, as they say in the scriptures, when the disciples ready, and this is what we mean by being ready. And some of the words I used were really strong. One of them was disgusted. Just to be disgusted with ourselves, with our lack of understanding, lack of humanity, whatever it is, disgusted with the world. We just have to know deep down that there's something else. I said that life is the guru up until that point, and that we learn by suffering. And it's true. But after a certain point, we don't have to learn by suffering once we have a guru. Because when we have a guide and follow the guide, he helps us over those rough patches. And it's joy that guides us at that point, and not suffering. I've heard it said that pain is a necessary part of life. We can't avoid that. But suffering is optional. It's how we respond to pain, how we respond to frustration, how we respond to challenges. And we can choose to suffer, or we can choose to learn. Because suffering is holding on to something that wants to go away, that's not useful anymore. It's one of the meanings of my spiritual name, Shivani, being able to renounce what's not necessary. You know, what's old, what's done, what's finished. And suffering is when the ego doesn't want to let go of that. And life And evolution won't stand for that because we have to move forward. And so it causes us to suffer and look for something better. So here we are, we're sitting in this room. We've all, in our own way, in our own words, said, help, and the universe has responded. So let's talk about what a guru is and what he does and who he is. If you go out to take a stroll, you probably don't even need a map. Right? You just go, you walk around the block, you have a nice time, you know the area pretty well. If you're going kind of far away, you're going to need your map. You're going to need a navigator. And so you put into the navigator where you want to go. You want to go on Beach Avenue in, Ocean Avenue in Santa Monica. And it's going to tell you how to get there. And it's going to tell you step by step. It's going to say, go out and turn right. Go 2 miles, get on the freeway, and so forth. So let's say you make a mistake. What does navigator say to you?
Rerouting.
What?
Rerouting.
Recalculating, rerouting, Okay, it's not going to say, you stupid ninny. It's very neutral about it. And it just wants to guide you to your destination. This is like a guru. He knows how to get there. He's got all the maps. He knows where you are. He has the inbuilt GPS. So he knows where you are in your evolution. And he has a responsibility for you. And it's not a responsibility that he has chosen. It's a responsibility that was given to him by God. Jesus very clearly said this to his disciples. One of the most beautiful chapters in the Gospels is in the Gospel of St. John, 15th chapter, when Christ is talking to his disciples at the Last Supper. And he says to them, you have not chosen me, I have chosen you, and my Father chose you, and it was he who gave you to me. Now I'm giving you back to the Father because I'm about to go away. But don't despair, I leave with you the Comforter, which is a whole other story, not for today. It's part of perhaps the greatest of all spiritual laws, which is the law of love, divine love. And that law says that God, the infinite consciousness, as I was saying to Harry, is pulling us. It's just like a big magnet, or just like the magnetism of the sun, the magnetic field of the sun. If we get too close to the sun, we get sucked in. And that sun is God. And if we get close enough, we will be drawn into it. Yogananda said that our journey has 3 phases. The first phase, which is worth 25% of the trip, is our own effort. We need to do the right things to line ourselves up with that sun. Now the next 25% is responsibility of the guru on our behalf. Because we can make a bunch of effort, we can try to do tons of things, and maybe they're just not going to be right for us in this particular moment. Not everything we read in the book, even if it's a spiritual book, should we do. And the guru is going to be there trying to guide us. When we first went to Italy, one of the women who came to our center was reading a book on magic, on black magic, and they had some incantations in the book. She thought, well, I'll just try this. She did. She was never the same. She really wasn't. She twice attempted suicide, and she's far better now, but not really well. So not everything we read or hear is necessarily good for us. And it's the guru's responsibility to indicate the way. He's the navigator. But he's not going to drive the car. The navigator doesn't drive, at least not these days. I think we're moving to the place where it's going to. Right, the self-driving cars, have you heard those? They're coming out, what do they say, by 2050 or 2030?
They're just parking now.
Hmm?
They're just parking.
Self-parking,
now.
yeah. I'm really waiting for that day, however. I mean, you know, no stress in driving, you get a program. But for now, the navigator doesn't drive the car. And we see this in the mythology of India. You've heard about the Bhagavad Gita, right? And you know that there is this conversation between the Lord, Krishna, and his disciple Arjuna. And Arjuna has accepted Krishna as his charioteer. It's his chauffeur. And Krishna says to him, when he offers his services as a chauffeur, he says, Arjuna, you can have me, and I will drive your chariot, but I'm not going to fight. I'm not going to pick up a weapon, either to fight or defend myself. The only thing I'm going to do is drive your chariot. And because Krishna drove Arjuna's chariot, he was victorious. And why was that? Because Krishna drove Arjuna's chariot exactly to the right place, at the right time, and told him, he gave him the counsel. He said, pick up your bow, you know, or use your sword, or let's retreat, or let's approach from the back. So this is what the Guru does. And in this case, he's driving, but he's not fighting. And it's our karma, and we have to face it. But the Guru is going to show us and tell us which are the weapons. Now let's change the analogy a little bit. Let's say we're going to go back to taking a walk. Instead of taking a walk, you want to go hiking. And so, you know, you go out and you go up and you have a nice day. And again, maybe you just need a little guidebook. But let's say you're serious about climbing and you want to become I don't know what they call it in English, an alpinista. You want
Mountaineer?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You want to become a mountaineer.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to just go out and buy, you know, look at a book and buy some equipment, go up to the mountain and start climbing? Let's say you want to do Everest or K2 or something. You going to take a guide? Yeah. Who was the first person who climbed up Mount Everest?
Bird, no, not Bird. Was
No, Bird, I think was this.
it Perry?
Edmund Hillary.
Edmund Hillary, yeah, that's the coup.
But that's not true. It was his Sherpa, Tansen.
Who?
Tansen.
This guy.
Oh.
His guide.
Tenzing Norgay.
Tenzin Norgay. It was Tenzin. I mean, probably Hillary put his foot up there and everything. But how did he get there
Got it.
if it wasn't for Tenzin? Okay. And why? Why that guide? Because he lived there. He knew the mountain. He knew how to get there. It's so dangerous climbing those high mountains. You know, you go the wrong way, it might look really good, a nice wide path, and it might end nowhere. You know, or in an avalanche, or in a slide, or in a gully, or in a dead end, and whatever. And you could die. So when you go mountain climbing, you want a guide who's been there. And that's what a guru is. A guru's been there. He's been to cosmic consciousness. He knows how to get there. He knows what the pitfalls are. And he knows how to guide us. He also knows what kind of training we need. Because we need the right equipment and we need the right training. So when a person no longer is happy taking the little, what was it, passeggiata, the little stroll, but wants to climb mountains, that's when we need the guru. And that's what the guru's responsibility is. Now I said that we don't choose the guru. Jesus said that. You know, you are my disciples because God has given you to me. We don't choose. We think we do. I mean, it's such a vanity. Well, you know, I'm going to choose my guru. And, you know, I've got to decide, and I'll read these things, and I'll make a list of advantages, disadvantages, and try to figure it out. We don't decide. Yeah, we just kind of have to, what should I say? It's already there. I mean, probably from the time our soul was created. The universe knew who the Satguru was going to be. I just mentioned a word in Sanskrit, Satguru. Sat means the truth. This is a kind of guru, which means there's other kinds. And we have many teachers, don't we? Our parents, they help us. You know, they love us and get coordinated, and they protect us and so forth, and guide us and teach us things and give us the foundations. We have teachers, some better than others. We have mentors. And we have spiritual guides. We read books and we go to lectures and conferences, and we get inspired, and we go on and on. There are many teachers, and it's a blessing. And perhaps we are all teachers to some people, you know, helping them in some way. Maybe not spiritually, maybe in another way, something that you know about and want to share with others. But there's only one guru, meaning that of all of the people who help us in all of our incarnations, only one soul is responsible for us. And that responsibility is to help us to God realization. And that responsibility entails deep loyalty on the guru's part. He or she will never give up on us, ever. No matter, even if we blaspheme God and the guru, turn against, and there's so many stories of people who have done that. Like Judas. I mean, is there any character more dramatic than that one, who betrayed his master? And Yogananda said that Judas in his last incarnation was completely liberated. It's not that long between the time he betrayed his guru, and that's the greatest sin that there is, and the time that he was liberated, because his guru never betrayed him. Many people spoke against Yogananda and his disciples and did nasty things, but he never left them. He let them leave, but his love was always there. There was one man who was terrible to Yogananda, and Yogananda every year at Christmas sent him a box of mangoes, and every year he sent the mangoes back. And then close to the end of his life, the man came. They were at some gathering together, and Master looked at him and said, "Remember, I will always love you." And that's the great blessing of the Guru. I mean, in a way, he's constrained to do that because he's responsible for us. And he will follow us through all incarnations, which is no small thing, because we blow it a lot. You know, we get close and then we blow it. We get close and then we lose it. We get distracted by so many things. But the Guru is always there. Only one person has that level of responsibility. Some other people might have some karmic responsibilities in our regard. Certainly our parents and our family and friends and other things, they have karmic responsibilities, but they're not responsible for bringing us into the light. So eventually we recognize who that Guru is. And the Guru is not, what should I say? The Guru is very patient. He's going to wait until we're ready. But once we are ready, he is going to make his presence known. If you know a little bit about the mission, the life and mission of Jesus, which was very short, it was only 3 years long. Remember, he grew up, and then those 18 lost years Yogananda and many others, tradition in India. Everybody in India knows that Jesus was in India. In fact, they even believe he's buried in Kashmir. There's a pilgrimage place and tomb where they feel that Jesus, in fact, was not killed during the crucifixion. But in any case, they know about Jesus. And then he came back. He was 30 years old. He was baptized by John, who was his guru.
And his cousin.
And his cousin, and his first cousin. Many of his other disciples were also his cousins. Yes. Most of the disciples and friends of Jesus were his relatives, which is very symbolic. Lazarus was his cousin, making Mary and Martha, Lazarus' sisters, his cousins. It's because the guru is familiar to us. He is we are part of his family. We have probably been in all kinds of relationships with that soul before. We've been brothers and sisters and married to him and whatever. And that's why the guru is so familiar. It's because we've spent so many lives. And many of those lives were before the guru was liberated. We have a long-standing relationship with this soul. So when God apportions out, the disciples, who is he going to choose to lead us? Except somebody whom we know, and somebody who we trust already, somebody with whom we've developed a loving relationship. So the Sat Guru, the one who has that responsibility, and he will undertake to do that. He will make himself known. So Jesus was baptized by John, who was his guru. And then he went up on a high mountain. And he was tempted by Maya. And there were 3 temptations. We won't get into that. But he overcame all of the temptations. Now, did he have to do that? No. He was a free soul. But he wanted to show his disciples and also the whole world that even when we get on the spiritual path, when we've found our guru, we're going to be tempted by Maya, especially then. Most especially then. Because once we find the guru, then the way can really be open and we can go so fast. And so Maya is going to get stronger and stronger. And it's going to try to hold us back. And so the temptations come. And they're there. But Jesus, he met them, he overcame them, didn't compromise at all. He comes down from the mountain, he'd been fasting, and he's ready to start his mission. What does he do? Does anybody remember?
He came to synagogue.
He didn't come to the synagogue first. He went to the Sea of Galilee, and he looked for his disciples. He collected his disciples. Came down from the mountain, went to Galilee, and saw Andrew. Andrew was the first one. You knew that. First disciple, the first of the apostles who recognized Jesus. He was sitting under a tree, and Jesus came up and told him about his life. And Andrew said, "What kind of man are you?" And then he said, "You are a man of God." And he ran and told his brother and cousins, and one of them was Peter, Simon Peter, and so on. And Jesus gathered his disciples. And again, as he said at the Last Supper, "You have not chosen me, I have chosen you." The guru comes. When Yogananda came to the United States, what did he do? Wait for his disciples to come to him? He was out there on those campaigns. He was traveling everywhere, across the United States, up into Alaska, really, from Boston to New York to Pittsburgh to Philadelphia to Denver, you name it, all of the big cities, Salt Lake, Seattle, Los Angeles, San Diego, everywhere he went. He was calling his disciples. And then at a certain point, he stopped his campaign, built up his work, but then he wrote his autobiography. And that's the call. Because he knew that his body was not going to last. That he couldn't go out and call all of his disciples because an avatar has many disciples. He's able to help many, a large number of people on many different levels. And so he wrote his book. And then that has become the main instrument through which Yogananda calls people. And all of you have read the autobiography and you felt something. There's something there, something that attracted you. Maybe not the first time you read it, or maybe the first time you read it. So this is how the divine law works. The Guru is out looking for us. And he's going to use whatever means he can. What are some other instruments? There's he himself, his teachings, especially if they're written down or passed down. His disciples. His disciples are the ones that go out and call to the other disciples. Just like the apostles, they were called apostles because they went out. So many were called by the disciples. Of the 4 Gospelists, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, 2 of them, I believe, one of them I know, I think 2 of them, for sure one, never met Jesus. Which one was it?
Luke.
Luke. Luke was a disciple of St. Paul. Mm-hmm. Luke was Greek, and he was a doctor. And it was St. Paul who went out. He spoke Greek. He was the only one of the apostles that had, especially after Judas died, who had a high level of education. Paul was a Roman citizen. He had traveled a lot. He also knew Greek. So he traveled around and he attracted people, of which there was Luke. And then Luke went to Mary, the mother of God, and got the story about the birth of Jesus and so forth. One of the other Gospelists, it could be Mark, was not a direct disciple of Jesus. So we see that the disciples of a master, especially when a master is no longer in a physical body, but even when he is, the master sends out his disciples to call others. And as Jesus says in one of his discourses, he says, you can tell the quality of a tree by eating its fruit. So a master is also known by the quality of his disciples. And that's one of the ways that we can know if we have found our master, is if we feel a resonance with his disciples. It feels like our spiritual family. If they are people whom you deem to be worthy, admirable, interesting, and with whom you feel a connection. Now, not every disciple is a perfect disciple. In fact, none of the disciples are perfect. If they were, remember Sri Yukteswar, one of my favorite sentences in the autobiography, if you were too good for this world, you would be adorning another. So the fact that we're here means that we're not yet perfect. We're on the way. We're discovering our strengths and so forth, and we're on the way. So this is the Guru's part. And he's going to do his job if we let him do his job. Now, 25% of the journey is up to us. And that 25% includes the discipline. When the navigator, if it's a good navigator, says go 2 miles and turn right, and you go 2 miles and turn right. And if he says practice meditation and this and that, you do it. Because a disciple means, and to take discipleship means, I am ready and willing to undertake the discipline that my master gives me. Now maybe I'm not going to succeed all the time, but that's my intention. It's not a stroll. I'm not expecting the master's going to do everything for me. I'm going to do my part. And I might do it miserably. I might fail every day, but I'm going to try. So it's our desire to undertake and to listen to the Guru. Whatever the Guru says is for our own good. So how does the Guru talk to us? We're here in this group talking about Yogananda. He doesn't have a physical body.
Intuition.
How did Yogananda guide his disciples during his lifetime, the disciples who weren't living with him? I mean, only a small fraction of his disciples were living with him, for one reason or another. In fact, some of his most advanced disciples were not living with him. How did he guide them? Intuition. Inwardly. The Guru is always guiding us. We don't need to be there. If we want guidance on something, and we ask for it, the Guru is going to respond. Maybe he won't appear in flesh and blood. Maybe we won't hear his voice, but he will cause it to happen. He will cause that guidance to come into our universe, whether it's through a book, a friend, a telephone call, a movie, a whatever, a lecture, a meditation, a something. He's going to answer that. Because every cry for guidance, every request for guidance is going to be fulfilled. That is his job. Once, not only once, but many times I would get these questions, these kind of arcane philosophical questions. And so one day I was with Swami and I said to him, I know that one of the things a Guru does for his disciples is to take some of their physical karma on their body. The Master did that, Jesus did that, they all do that. And especially near the end of their lives. Padre Pio did that. I don't know if you know Padre Pio. You're a good guy. You know Padre Pio?
I've heard stories.
Oh, you've got to
I
know
know,
Padre
I
Pio.
want to learn.
You got it. It's really, you come over and visit us in Italy. It's really nice because it's a Catholic country, right? And there we are doing yoga. It's really beautiful. And we're located in Assisi, which is the heart of the Catholic Church. The Vatican is the head. You know, it's the frusta, it's the of the Catholic Church. But Assisi is the heart of the Catholic Church. How did we get here?
Padre Pio and physical karma.
Padre Pio, physical karma, thank you. Physical karma, yeah, that was. So they take physical karma. So I said to Swami, this is a wonderful thing that they do. I mean, you know, I hope I never cause my Guru to have to take on physical karma. But, I mean, how can that work if the Guru doesn't have a physical body? How can he take on our physical karma without a physical body? It just doesn't make sense. And Swami's answer, he said, let him figure that out. I love that. I mean, at first, you know, I was, because I wanted an answer, you know. But of course, that's the Guru's part. That's his responsibility. He's going to figure it out. He's going to take care of it. Why do we need to worry? Why do we need to try to do his part or tell him how to do his part? What's important is that we never doubt that he is doing his part. Doubt is the strongest obstacle to spiritual growth. And especially once you find your Guru and your teaching, follow it. And don't doubt that it's going to work. Doubt yourself. Doubt, you know, like that song, if I find not, I will not blame the sea, I will find fault with my diving. Okay, so we can doubt our ability, but don't doubt the Guru's ability to help us and to guide us and to share his strength with ours. Never doubt that he's on our side. Never doubt that he is doing his work. We go to 4 o'clock, right? Okay, we're almost there. So what's our part?
Obedience.
Obedience.
Dedication.
Oh, I said, let's take them one at a time.
Okay.
Let's take obedience. What do you think about that concept? Obedience. You like that? Do you want to be obedient? Heel, sit, obedience training. But yes, of course we want to be obedient, but we want to be intelligently obedient. We want to follow what the Guru suggests. Now the Guru is not going to insist, because neither God nor the Guru will ever interfere with our free will, because it's the most precious thing we have. And if we're going to jump off a cliff and we're determined to do that, it's not going to stop us, because we're going to learn from that. I mean, what's death? We've had so many, and so many lives, and we have so many lessons to learn. So the Guru is not afraid to let us die physically, but he'll never let us die spiritually. So what does obedience mean? It means we want to follow the navigator and test it out, try it out. This is the path, self-realization is the path of experience. And we need to experience and understand from our own experience why it's good to energize, for example. And how do we feel when we don't? You know, it's not that we're going to go to hell if we don't energize or do our kriya. You know, it's just that we're not going to be on the top of our game spiritually. So, obedient, how did Swami put it? He said, I never doubted anything my master asked me to do, but that doesn't mean I didn't question it. To question without doubt. Just question, well, you know, why? You know, why is it good? And if we ask why, we'll find out. And sometimes we won't. You know, like, why do we start energization on the left? Master didn't say. We do it first on the left and then on the right, right? Each of the things, left and right. Okay, Master didn't say. I don't know. I mean, I can make up an answer, but I wouldn't do that. I would just say, he didn't say. Okay? And that's good enough for me. You know, if he did say, and if I find it somewhere, okay. But there it is. My ways are not thy ways, saith the Lord. It means that the Guru's indications to us, suggestions, are not going to be, according to us, logical or necessarily make sense, but not blind obedience, thinking obedience, you know, willing, making that decision, using our free will with understanding. We need to understand as much as we can, knowing that we can't understand everything, because the mind's just not going to comprehend it. So a disciple is one who follows discipline. It's the same word. Willingly. And it's a self-discipline. And that's really hard. It's a lot easier to live in some structure, you know, in some monastery or convent where, you know, you've got to, you know, get up at 4 and do this, and then do this at 6, and then do this at 8, and everybody's doing it, and otherwise you can't stay there. That's not, you know, thinking obedience. Because we've got to know what it feels like not to do it. We have to know what it feels like to be out of tune, to be out of harmony. And then we have a point of reference. You know, we suffer, and we say, no, I don't want to go there. What else is the mark of a disciple? You said something else. You said dedication?
Devotion.
Devotion. Okay? Devotion to what? Devotion to whom? Should we be devoted to the Guru? Should we be devoted to the Guru? What does that mean? We worship the Guru? It's a whole path in India. It's called Guru Seva, to serve the Guru. All the time to think about the Guru. To ask, you know, what does he want? What is right? But it's an inward thing. You know? According to Yogananda, he doesn't exist. Yogananda doesn't exist. I killed Yogananda long ago. No one dwells in this temple now but God. So why would we worship Yogananda? He doesn't want us to worship him. He wants us to carry on. Get on with the journey. Get on with the path. Keep moving forward. I think what's Yogananda said that the dearest relationship that we can have with God is friendship. And Yogananda and Swami Kriyananda consider themselves our friends. That's who they are. And what do we do for friends? We help each other. And we love each other. And if things are... remember when Yogananda was initiated by Swami Sri Teshwar, and he said, I give you my unconditional love. And Yogananda said, well, what if I ever find that you are less than the ideal master that I think you should be? You remember what he said, Sri Teshwar, I don't want your love. It stinks. That's not love. That's condition. And there are times when we need to help the Guru. And there was Jesus helping John. And that was John's last life, by the way. He was liberated, Yogananda said, in that lifetime. Jesus, another thing Jesus, I don't know why I'm talking so much about Jesus today.
It's good.
It's good. Jesus said, I have to translate from the Italian, because I've been saying these things in Italian so much. Signore, Signore. You call me Lord, Lord, but you don't do what I ask. And he was sad about that. He really was. And so that's the part of the disciple. We do what our Guru asks. Our best. We just do our best. Loyalty is an important aspect. Loyal to what? To the principles. Loyal to the teachings. We want to be loyal. We don't want to, what should I say? Once we understand that there is one Satguru and many others, it's like having a father and uncles. Okay? So there are other spiritual teachers who inspire us. And we can go and be with them and hear them and read them. But we're loyal to Dad. Because Dad's the one, who's got to keep the house and earn the money and raise us up and make sure we're good. And we're loyal because we don't need anything else. Once we have the Satguru, he'll give us everything. There's nothing he can't give us, and he will find a way. Just like that question I asked, let Yogananda figure it out. He will find the way to supply us with everything that we need. Back again to doubt. In one of our pilgrimages in India, from Europe, we go every year on pilgrimage to India. There's one starting now. And there's a Kriyaban, a woman saint in Hardwar. And she was initiated by Lahiri Mahashaya in a vision, and believes that she was one of his daughters in that incarnation. Anyway, she's a very wise woman. And we were in a satsang with her, and it came the question time. And nobody was asking questions because everybody was, nervous and embarrassed. And so I just said, oh, Mataji, what is the biggest obstacle on the spiritual path? Right away, she said. I mean, they had hardly finished translating my question for her when she said doubt. She said, never doubt God. Never doubt your path. Never doubt your Guru. Because doubt just blocks your energy and it will pull you down. This doesn't mean not to question. Swami asked all kinds of questions of Yogananda. We ask all kinds of questions of him. You should ask all kinds of questions. We should question, but with the right attitude. What is the right attitude? Really wanting to know. Not thinking that we know. Do you question with presumption? Do you question with arrogance? Do you question to put another person down, to challenge? Or to question because you really want to know? You don't want to have your opinion confirmed. That's not doubting. Other qualities of a disciple. What do you think? We have obedience, we have devotion, we have discipline. Andre?
Steadfast.
Steadfastness. Okay? To be steadfast. Just to fall down, get up, fall down, get up. Just keep going, to be constant. Now, again, the Guru doesn't expect us to be perfect. And we might make promises that we would love to keep and can't. And the Guru is not bothered by that. What's important is that we never lose our intention, our good intention, that this is what we want. Maybe I'm not able to do it right now, but this is what I want to do. I want to meditate. I want to do my exercises. I want to do my prayer. And to be steadfast in that, in our desire to find God. That's the one thing that nobody can give us, the Guru can't give us, is the desire for God. That's part of our 25%. Well, we're up to 50%, aren't we? 25% of our own effort in following the guidance of the Guru, 25%. He guides our efforts, just like Tensei, the Sherpa, who guided Edmund Hillary up the mountain. The other 50%, it's God's grace, God's love is pulling me, right? Wants you home. And if we just get in the Guru's car, in the passenger seat, and let him drive, he's going to take us to the point where we can get out, and the love of God will pull us in. So this is the most beautiful relationship that there is. Nobody else, not our mother, not our husband or wife or lover, can ever accept us as completely as the Guru does. He knows that we're his children. He knows that we are expressions of God, and it's his job to help us discover it. It's a wonderful thing. It's not about obligation. It's not about, what should I say, duty. It's about love. Just to be able to feel, to want to be guided, to want guidance in our life. The ego doesn't want that. I remember once I put a sign up in front of my desk, Let me see if I can remember it. I know the second part. Yeah, it was, I don't want to be right. I just want to find God. Okay? The ego wants to be right. And it's going to fight and everything and do all of its things and not want to be guided. But a disciple is the person who wants to know, who wants to be guided, and who's willing to undertake the training to get there. Think of the training that it requires to be a tennis champion. You into tennis? There's some great young tennis stars these days. You see, there's that young teenage woman. 19-year-old.
So,
Yeah.
Stefan.
Yeah, really something. So there's a whole new batch. How long do you think she practices every day?
25 hours.
Okay. How about if somebody wants to be a singer? a great pianist, or whatever.
Practice.
You practice. And you know, and you do it because that's what you want. That's your goal. And it's the same thing with being a disciple. A disciple understands you've got to practice. And we can't expect to wait for our life to change to give us the opportunity to practice. Because it ain't never going to come. Ever. We have to change our life. And especially when the guru comes in. The guru, you know, is like a huge piece of furniture in a small house. You got to rearrange the house to fit the big sofa. Yeah. There's going to be changes and a willingness to do that. So let's just take our last 5 minutes. Meditate on these things. I think we can turn off. That was the last thought. The guru was left with sofa in a small